It's a sad day. Little hole in my block. You can see all the way through the other side. Got on the two-step. It decided to let go. Here's the aftermath. The wrist pin is no longer in the middle of the rod, and it just sheared and bent that tiny little guy. And here's the rest of the rod where it sheared. You can see where it was slapping as it came around on the crank. I almost couldn't get this bolt out. I had to put a one size larger socket on it because of how badly it's shaved down. And this is the piston. This is part of it. Junk rings. But you can see there's a crack in it all the way across. It looks like it broke the top of the piston off. But I'm sure I had enough ring gap in it, so I'm not sure why it would have cracked like that. I was only running about 8 or 9 psi boost. This does have a turbo on it that I made myself. Here's the turbo kit. Just a little max speeding rods, turbo, eBay manifold that I custom made myself. Put a external wastegate on it. Put the internal gate block off on there. 2.5 inch exhaust. But the lucky part is that none of the valves were damaged. It was on the number 3 cylinder. The valves, one looks darker on one side than the other, but that's about how they are throughout. So, not really concerning. And I would flip it over, but there's still the lifters in here, and I don't want those to fall out. But the bottom of the head is perfectly fine. The valves may need to be touched up on the seats a little bit, but that's nothing that I can't do. The lifters, I put new lifters in it not too long ago. They're still looking good. The best part is that the crankshaft appears to still be fine. Besides where it was banging around on the crankshaft, like right there. But there's a chunk there where it flung around and slapped it, but also there's supposed to be an oil squirter on either that side over there or down there that points up and shoots oil at the piston to cool it. And we've had one of them break off before, so we know that they're not really too good to be in there, because they're just pressed in. They're not like the screw-in deal, so they can just fly out whenever they feel like it. I think I'm going to put some forged rods and pistons in here and delete the oil squirters. Just tap them out, put a pipe plug in them. Everybody on the aftermarket says that you might as well just remove them because the forged pistons don't need the extra cooling, and that it helps the oil consumption to not run them. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. But the only thing that I can't reuse is just this block and this aluminum stiffener that holds the main caps in. But you can just see where that rod just slung around and caused a lot of chaos. It's also windowed on the back of it, way back here. You can see a big old hole in it, and then down below it knocked a hole in the stiffener. So we're just gonna plop this one out, put some forged rods, pistons in it maybe. We've got a couple of spare blocks laying around, so it's nothing new. I've got it on a micro squirt, which the wiring looks all jank because I've just been trying different things with it just to see what's gonna run the best. I was running LS smart coils, these deals, except for some reason it wouldn't let me go above 5 to 6 pounds of boost no matter what I did, and I had to run more dwell on them than recommended to actually get them to run right. And it's not just the AMP EFI coils, because I also bought some Fuel Tech coils. legitimate Fuel Tech coils. And I figured, well, if the Fuel Tech coils aren't going to do it, then these amp ones aren't going to do it either. So I went ahead and just made my own coil on plug setup out of these Honda V6 coils. And it was running all the way up to 10 pounds where the boost cut is. Made the harness myself and everything. But it was running up to 10 pounds of boost perfectly fine. And then it developed a little bit of a misfire. I don't know if that was engine related or what. But then I hit the two-step and it just grenaded the whole thing, so. Alright guys, here's the motor out of the car. Looks like the coolant passages were getting a little rusty. The motor been in the car for about a year and a half or so. After a full rebuild. Looks like the oil pump front main seal wasn't leaking anything. So that's kind of sad that I have to take that off now. Doesn't look like the oil pump was really leaking all that much, so that's kind of nice. I got all the front accessories taken off. I'm about to take the oil pump off. I might look inside of it and see if the gears are messed up and see if any metal got into the oil and into the gear. Because as soon as this happened, I just shut it right off. I didn't let it try to idle or anything because I knew exactly what had happened to it. So I just shut it off immediately, and I think it might have saved it. I don't know, not really sure. But there's the damage on the back side, or the front side. And there's the damage on the back side. Windowed it all the way through. So I'm gonna get the oil pump off, and then maybe flip it over, get the stiffener off, and then we'll take a look under there. Alright, I got the block flipped over on its side now, and now I can see the stiffener more clearly. So this stiffener piece, these bolts right here, these are going into the main bearing caps, and this whole piece ties the whole crank together. And we lost the number 3 rod, and you can just see where it just came apart and just unleashed all that chaos. There's nothing here. It's actually bulged out right here, cracked all over. Okay, so I gave this part a whack. It was hanging off of here. I whacked it on this side, and that just came off in one piece. And it was a little bit harder to get this one off. Realized I forgot 2 bolts in it on accident, but that's because there's bolt here and down here, and then 2 here, and then there's 2 nuts here. Just a lot for this area alone. But I got that off. I did notice that the rear main was leaking just a slight bit. It's just a little wet. But I got everything off, and nothing looks any more damaged than the block. And I went ahead and took off the number 2 rod cap just to go ahead and look at it. And from what I see, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this bearing, and it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna say there was no oil going through the pump, or at least to the bearings. So got that one figured out. So I'm gonna pull all the rods, and I'm gonna pull the crank out, look at the crank a little bit closer, make sure that nothing's damaged on the crank, and I'll see you then. Alright, we're back. So I just got the crank out, and I was looking, and I don't know how well the camera's going to pick it up, but these bearings still look brand new just how I put them in. There is hardly anywhere, at least on the bottom side, besides these weird little marks here. I'll show you on the cap here in a minute. But besides that, these bearings still look brand new, so I don't think any metal or anything went through them. Even the thrust bearings look fine, so I don't think that the crankshaft is bent at all. If you look at the actual crankshaft, it's still perfectly smooth. There's no marks on it. That's number 1, 2, number 3, that's close. Number 4, there's nothing on there. And number 5, there's also nothing. And if you look, So this is a forged crankshaft. Most of these came with the forged crankshaft, and they're pretty strong. But as you can see, it just looks like it got beat up a little bit. So I might try and just smooth the whole crankshaft down, just take all these sharp edges off and everything, just enough to take the edges off, not anything to remove weight or anything. But just smooth all that out. I doubt that it's bent or messed up in any way. And what I was talking about here on the bearing is there's just some weird stuff going on out there right on the top of that bearing. But otherwise, all these bearings look the exact same, and they're not. They look like they're really like deeply grooved, but there's nothing that catches the fingernail or anything. It's perfectly smooth. So everything's all good here. I think I'm gonna order some forged rods and pistons. I believe. I don't think I'm gonna put these back into another block. Well, I might put them into a block for my brother, but I don't think I'm gonna run these rods, because these rods and pistons are perfectly fine. There's hardly any wear on them. The bearings, they look completely fine. So I'll go grab another rod and piston. We have a spare. I'll put all new bearings and piston rings on it, and I'll throw it in his motor over there. And then I think I'll just order forged piston and rods, K1 rods, and Y-scope pistons, and slap that together and try to make some jam, I guess. So that's all I got to show you. I'll give you an update next time I can. So we'll see you next time.